This podcast is a production of Widener Law Commonwealth in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For more information, visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu/podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Widener Law Commonwealth's podcast. I'm your host, Tara Mead, the new Communications and Marketing Manager, and today I'm joined by Legal Methods professors Amanda Sholtis and Anna Hemingway, who also is the Director of the Legal Methods program here. So first off, thank you both so much for taking the time to appear on this podcast. Our focus for this podcast is on the subject of fundamentals, specifically dealing with communication and discussing some of the challenges that many first-year students face, but also some of the opportunities that they present. And one of the things that I was surprised to discover when I joined the law school had to do with the students' communication with professors, both verbally and in writing, and I found that our law school is certainly not alone in dealing with this issue. For example, specifically students being really casual in some cases addressing their professors, using their first names, for example, or just texting or emailing them in that same fashion. And so some law professors believe it's an indication of a more relaxed atmosphere among students during their undergrad years that carries over into law school. And others say it's more of a reflection of the so-called texting generation. So let me pose this question to both of you, and you can take turns answering. But what do you both think might be behind this?
So I will tell you that I have not noticed this lack of professionalism from the students. I have spoken to colleagues at other law schools that have told me stories of, their students referring to them just by their last name, right? So like if I were a student and Professor Sholtis was my professor, then I would just say, hey, Sholtis. So I have heard that from other schools. I have honestly not experienced that at Widener Commonwealth. And I think it may be that I tend to be a rather formal professor and I set that tone. So I've not had that experience. I don't know if you have.
I would say every once in a while, I may have a student address me in a way that I think, but I don't really think it is a matter of disrespect or lack of formality. I think that especially for students who go from undergraduate right into law school, they haven't had the practice or the experience of communicating in a business setting. And so I think really it's a matter of maybe lack of experience or understanding. Students in our extended division typically are working full-time jobs and going to school, and I've never had an issue with a student in the extended division because they've had that practice, they've had that experience.
And what are some of the ways that you both can help students, adopt a more professional protocol in the event that you do have a student that may need a little bit of help in that regard, in addition to the modeling?
Well, in Legal Methods 1, we actually have an assignment that is based on an email communication. So it is modeled after the student getting an assignment from a partner in a law firm, and they have to respond as the younger associate. And so we talk about in class what is proper email etiquette in a business setting, and then they get the opportunity to write an email and receive a grade on it. I think that goes a long way in educating the students, and we do that in the first semester.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we do educate them on email correspondence. We go through an inappropriate email from a student to a faculty member and have them correct it, and I think they learn a lot from that exercise. And I think, beyond that, if we see a student who perhaps does something that is inappropriate, I have found that the best way to handle that is just to have a private conversation with that student in a way that does not embarrass them or make them feel bad that they didn't know what they did was inappropriate. For example, years ago, I had a student, I was not in my office, and a student came into my office and sat down without me there. And that student wasn't being disrespectful, they weren't being rude, they just wanted to talk to me, and they didn't understand that in a professional setting, you don't enter somebody's office and make yourself comfortable. So, we just had a really, relaxed conversation, and they apologized, and they thanked me and said that, wow, I didn't know, thank you, now I know, I won't do it again. And I think that's a really, you have to handle it on a case-by-case basis, but I think a kind conversation is always helpful.
I agree, because when you have a situation where it's to what both of you are saying, a student just isn't aware, or they came from a background as an undergrad where, their professors are like, just pop by my office hours, that sort of thing. So it's sort of like a little bit of a mind shift from where they were previously, in their undergrad years. But, I would think it's also important because to learn those skills early on, so when they do graduate and they do take the bar and they pass and they go to work in the legal profession, they're going to be around all different types of people. I mean, they may be in a court setting, for example, or they may be in a large firm or corporate setting where that's really important, to be able to know how to address those people. And that could have either a positive or a negative effect on, if they don't have the skills, that is. If, they go into a situation where they're talking to, a president judge, things of that nature. I would think that setting that tone really early on is like super critical.
Absolutely. And I think you talked about the media of communication, and I do think that also has had an impact. Years ago, I would have never thought I would be communicating with my students via text message, but I do now, because it's just easier. If I need to get a message out to my students quickly, it's easier to send a text message than to try to send an email. And so I think just that shift in the way we communicate also has an impact on the students and how the students communicate and how they do in maybe a less formal manner.
And I know that another challenge for first-year students, and I know you had mentioned this in some of the correspondence that we've had, Professor Sholtis, is analyzing statutes and case law, and I think that's something that both of you can agree can seem pretty daunting, especially for a first-year student. Can you both talk about this and how you help students, both in terms of understanding the cases, being able to articulate it, both in terms of, writing something, but also in communicating it verbally and getting to the point where they feel comfortable, addressing in even a mock court situation?
I think Professor Sholtis and I both tend to break things down quite a bit, and I think that that's the secret to our success, so that when we'll start legal methods with a statute, and we will give the students a chance to break it down, but then we will also break it down with them and guide them through it. Early on, we also do what's called read-alouds, where we'll take a case and read it out loud to them and pause and explain what our thoughts are as we are going through that case. And I think, modeling that is very helpful. But for sure, learning how to read statutes, learning how to read cases, that's a difficult skill to gain, and it's not something that's taught overnight. It's something that we repeatedly reinforce and also give our students the opportunity and the understanding that it takes quite a while to grasp this skill. I'll have students come to me sometimes 2 weeks into the process of legal education and say, I'm still not getting it. And I'll just kind of snicker a little bit and say, that's why you have 3 years if you're a day student, or 4 years if you're an evening student, because it does take time. It's something that you don't learn overnight, and you really need patience.
And I agree. I think one thing that Professor Hemingway and I both do is set those expectations with students, saying this is going to be hard. Coming into law school, you would not think it's going to be difficult. This is a graduate school program. I'm going to be reading and I'm going to be, discussing in class until they start reading the statutes and the case law and they realize, I don't understand what this is saying. So we let them know how hard it's going to be. And I know, I think we both share this quote with our students when we talk about reading the law. Scott Turow, in his book 1L, about his first year in law school, said that reading the law was like stirring concrete with my eyelashes. And so I think that helps them know, look, you're not the only one that's struggling with this. This is hard for every first-year student. And so just keep at it. You will get better the more you practice.
And for someone like me who I dabbled a little bit in my undergrad years. I got my degree in journalism, and one of the classes that I had to take was Law of Libel and Communications, and that, to me, was like an eye-opener, being able to read some of the cases and try to, understand it. And thankfully, the professor that we had was similar in both of your approaches, that, sort of took it out in chunks and helped us understand it. And she was a freedom of information law professor who came and taught the class for us. So I think, setting those expectations early, just saying, look, we know this is going to be tough, so just hang in there and, we'll work at it together. It must be nice, though, at the end of that semester to see some of the growth that these students have had and being able to get those skills under their belt, or at least start the process, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the things I enjoy most about what I teach is I start with students in August who are struggling to read a case or a statute, and then by the end of the school year, they're delivering an oral argument on a brief that they wrote. They do so much in such a short amount of time that it's always just it's just a great part of my job to see that growth.
And I know that here at Widener Law Commonwealth, we do have several students who are first-time law students. In other words, they're the first in their family to pursue a law degree. In both of your perspectives, do you feel that poses some additional challenges for them? And how do you help them, effectively navigate their way through law school?
I don't know if I would say that I think it poses some additional challenges, but I do think that if you come from a family that has lawyers or people involved in the legal profession, I do think that provides an advantage to those students. Luckily, what I've seen is that students who don't have that background tend to catch up rather quickly. And I think part of that is we have a unique program at the school called Introduction to Legal Process, where students come in for about a week before classes begin, and they get educated on the fundamentals of the legal profession. And I do think that helps Widener Commonwealth students.
And I think I myself was the first in my family to go to law school. And I think what was challenging for me was just not knowing what to expect. All that I knew of the law was what I saw in TV or in movies, and even of law school. It's a very old movie, but The Paper Chase was what I was expecting when I came into law school. And so I think while I was in law school, though, I was able to learn and I was able to build my professional network so that I think I was on par with the students that had lawyers in their families by the time I graduated.
And I know you both touched on this a little bit, but speaking of those first-year students, whether they had that law background or not coming into Widener Law Commonwealth, what do you both enjoy most in working with first-year students?
So I enjoy the enthusiasm that they bring to the classroom. They are always very excited, and they understand that they come in with an understanding regardless if they're first-generation law student or not, they come in with an understanding that legal education is different than what they've done in the past. And I have found them to be extremely eager and enthusiastic about learning about the law, and I think that's probably what I enjoy the most.
And mine's very similar. I enjoy watching students for that light bulb moment when it clicks for them. And you get to see that a lot in the first year when they finally get a concept or they finally feel confident in a skill that they're learning. And they just are a delight to be around because they are enthusiastic, they're engaged, they're excited about the law.
So I want to wrap things up a little bit and just talk about some of the possible potential law students that might be listening to this podcast. And what advice would you have for them, for those that are thinking about going to law school or definitely want to go to law school? What would you say to them if you were in an elevator with them or in the hallway with them and they wanted to talk with you about this?
I would say don't worry about your undergraduate education and whether it prepared you for law school, because you can have any major, science, math, political science, history, dance, any major, and you can go to law school. So I wouldn't worry about your undergraduate preparation. What I would recommend is that you come in with some skills to be able to deal with the stress of law school. Law school and law practice can be intense and stressful, and so having some coping skills and taking care of yourself, some self-care skills, can go a long way in helping you be successful in law school and in law practice.
I think that's terrific advice. I think I would give similar advice. I would also tell them, they should spend some time before coming to law school just reading. Critical reading is one of the most important skills that we teach. And I would encourage them to read, and I'm not saying read about the law, read anything that you want to read, but read. And then I think I might invite them into the school for a day. I think that, it'd be great for them to, if they're thinking about it and unsure, why not come in and check out the school, see what they think about legal education.
And I think that both of you have shared some really good information and tips for people. And at the time that we are recording this, we are in the midst of finals, and your response, Professor Sholtis, in particular, talking about coping skills and how to handle stress. It's like that. I think that would probably hit quite a nerve with a lot of our students. So either one of you, have you ever had students come to you and say, I'm really stressed out? What can I do to sort of help myself and stay focused, but, keep going, whether it's, during exams or just in general during their classes? They're just, they're just carrying a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And I think because we teach legal writing and our classes are smaller, we get to know our students very well. And I think many of them have a comfort level in coming to us. So absolutely, I have had students come to me with all sorts of issues and concerns. And usually, I thankfully have the time to sit with them and talk with them. And depending on what they're dealing with, really come up with some sort of a plan to help them manage and address whatever is going on in their life.
And one thing that I believe Professor Sholtis does as well, in our last class in the fall semester of legal writing, which we call Legal Methods at Widener Commonwealth, we have a class and we talk about how are you going to take your finals, and is there anything that you can do now to help you get your life in order for when you have finals, to help you manage that stress, perhaps reduce that stress? So, for example, some of our students work. Can they arrange to cut back on hours during finals? Or, some of our students have pets. Can they arrange for someone else to perhaps walk the dog, even a few times a week? That relief can help them feel more confident because they'll have more time to study if they can make those arrangements beforehand, and that will manage the stress for them during exam period.
And that's, some really good advice, both of you, sharing, just some, what I think some people would say common sense tips, but until you're in the midst of, a stressful situation, whether it's finals or something else, sometimes it's good to sort of take those proactive measures to say, I know that this time is going to be really, really, there's going to be a lot asked of me, so I need to give myself some of that space and practice some self-care, so that way I'm at my best when, I'm sitting in front of the computer or writing something down and being able to, effectively, go through my exams and, enjoy the, at least for us now, the holiday season that's coming up. So just wanted to say thank you to you both, Professor Sholtis and Professor Hemingway, for sharing your expertise and your perspective and advice. And also wanted to thank our listeners. And until next time, please be safe and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Widener University Commonwealth Law School is the Pennsylvania capital's only law school, with 3 specialized centers of legal scholarship through its Law and Government Institute, Environmental Law and Sustainability Center, and Business Advising Program. Widener Law Commonwealth offers an exceptional learning experience that is personal, practical, and professional. Visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu for more information.